Let's do our doodle notes for Chapter 4, Section 1. So this is going to be labeled at the top of our page, 4.1. And our title is Rocks and Weathering. Okay? And so the first thing we need to do is make sure that we know the difference between what is weathering and what's erosion. So if we have like a mountain, and over time that mountain breaks into smaller pieces, we call that weathering. But if these rock particles are moved by wind, water, gravity, or ice, that movement is called erosion. Okay. Now, there are two types of weathering. There's mechanical weathering, which is also known as physical weathering. And there's chemical weathering. So this rock can be broken down so this rock can be broken down by mechanical means or chemical means. And then if this rock is moved, we're going to call that erosion. Now this is on the top half of your page. On the bottom half of the page, we're going to talk about the rate of weathering. So the rate, sorry, I'm in my lightsaber mode. The rate of weathering is determined by two parts: the type of rock and the climate. To have a rock that's going to weather fast is going to be something like a porous rock or a permeable rock. And something that's going to weather slow is going to be something like a solid rock like granite. Now the climate also determines the rate of weathering. A fast rate of weathering is going to come from a hot and wet climate, and a slow rate of weathering is going to be a cold, dry climate. So now we're going to turn our paper over and we're going to look into detail at the types of weathering like mechanical and chemical weathering. At the top of your page, we're going to, or the top half of your page, we're going to draw a picture that represents all the components or possibilities of mechanical or physical weathering. So this is just a physical breakdown of rocks. So I might have a picture where I have the rock and it's broken in several places. So several things can happen that causes mechanical weathering. I could have the action of animals. For instance, I could have a dog. Looks more like a pig. Sorry about that. And the dog is kicking dirt. Okay, so he's kicking dirt out of the ground and breaking the rocks apart as he's scratching at the rocks. So one of the types of weathering could be action of animals. Okay. Another type of weathering is when rocks will scratch up against each other, and this is called abrasion. Something else you might see is if we have a plant growing and its roots go down into the rock and break the rock apart. And so this one is caused by growth of plants. Change that. That is not a good growth. Try again. So the roots of plants might break down the rocks physically. We could have ice wedging, where water fills in the rock and freezes and then increases the size of the rock. And we could have a release of pressure, where you might have a rock that is sitting on another rock, and when we pick up that big rock, so when we take a big rock off the top of it, it causes these other rocks to crumble. And so if we basically if we take the pressure off, it causes the other rocks to fall apart. So we have release of pressure. Okay, so we have, if we look, we have several different types of mechanical weathering. We have release of pressure, ice wedging, the growth of plants, scratching, called abrasion, and the action of animals. Now we're going to move to the bottom half of the page, and we're going to draw a picture that represents chemical weathering. Okay, so some examples of chemical weathering, sorry, because I'm getting ready to draw water, is when water dissolves rock particles. So something like limestone might get dissolved by water. And you can't get that limestone back. You might have where there's iron in the rock and the rock rusts thanks to oxidation. So oxygen might cause rusting of the rock. You also might have where things like mosses that are growing on the rock, their roots will emit acid and will break the rock apart. So things like living organisms can chemically weather with their acidic roots. And then we have where the rock might weather and become very smooth thanks to carbonic acid from CO2 mixing with the air. And I'm going to use the shape of the rock to remind me of the letter C in carbonic acid that is created from CO2, carbon dioxide, mixing with the environment. And then my last thing is acid rain. And this is when we take pollutants from emissions from our factories and cars, and that causes chemical weathering on our rocks. Okay, so this is carbonic acid if you can't read what this word was trying to say. Okay. And that's it for the notes or the doodle notes on Chapter 4, Section 1 on the types of weathering, the difference between weathering and erosion, and the rate of weathering.